Hi, I'm your Gemini friend. This video is about Lilith in Gemini and Lilith in the third house. When it comes to the house versus the sign's going to be expressing your Lilith placement through Gemini, through the Lilith distortion of Gemini energy, like a personality. If it's in the third house, this is going to be an area of life regarding communication, mental and intellectual processes, and a lot more. I'll get more into it. When it comes to Lilith, I do have a video in the description that goes over it more, but Lilith is a placement in our chart that represents where we feel rejected and shame, and we kind of reject ourselves in that way. We might have been conditioned to feel like a part of us is wrong or unacceptable, but ultimately we want to reclaim this energy and have the most positive expression of it because we have a lot of innate power in this area, but lots of things shut down. So if you're interested in a natal chart or a synastry reading, I do offer those and there's information in the description. But getting into this, so Lilith it's an extreme expression of the energy that it's in. So things can go extreme in one direction or the other. Considering Gemini as a sign and an energy, its main focus is communication, learning, curiosity, observing, and all sorts of social interactions. The third house also deals with our siblings and our immediate environment because this is the stage of life where you are observing, you're taking in information curiously and wanting to understand more. It's about processing your surroundings, and siblings are some of the first people that we interact with. So a lot of that can shape our communication style in a way. But when you have this Lilith type of wounding in the area of Gemini or your third house, communication issues with expressing yourself, with learning, processing information, and putting your thoughts into words can be issues. So when it comes to the extremes here, there can be an aversion to communication, to expressing yourself, to talking even, or there can be a tendency to over-explain, over-analyze. Anxiety is highly connected to Gemini. It rules the nervous system, and it's a very mentally busy sign. So regardless of how you express it, there's likely a lot of mental energy here. Lilith is going to be varying in just how strong it is within everyone's chart. So you do have to look at your own specific personal makeup of energies as far as just how much of this is going to be standing out for you. But Lilith in Gemini or the third house can often point to issues early on, like in school or in the way that you learn and process information. It could be a sense of shame for you. Maybe you think differently or speak differently than the people that you were growing up around. Maybe you were shamed for expressing your opinion, or even like asking why too much. Gemini is like the curious child that wants to understand everything. All new information that comes in, it wants a place to put it. It wants to understand where it goes and how it can be useful and how it can be taught to other people. Just Gemini loves information. It loves it. It wants more. It's always looking for more. So that's where this mental busyness can come from, because there can be an intake of information that's so strong that it causes a lot of restlessness. One way that this can be expressed is the fear of not knowing what to say. Say you are approaching a conversation, there could be super anxiety over whether or not you're going to be able to carry the conversation. You could feel like there's a lot of weight on you as far as carrying conversations goes. You could feel like people never quite reciprocate the way that you do and that it's a struggle. You could dread small talk because there's just so much going on in your head that the natural expression of Gemini, where it's curious, it wants to know things about people, it wants to understand things, so it will ask questions, and it tends to think of directions to take a conversation. But, you know, when you're so caught up in like, where is this going, rather than just letting it flow naturally, that can be an issue. And there is also a theme with being misunderstood here. Expressing yourself in a way that other people do not easily receive, or having issues with people like always hearing you wrong, always thinking you're talking about something else. A lot of a lot of other things can factor in with this. Your Mercury sign and house especially, but this can even lead to just like saying too much and directionless, saying too much just with no direction, just trying to talk to fill the space. There could be anxiety with silence, with gaps in conversation, and just feeling like you can't get your thoughts under control, or a tendency to take over the conversation entirely. One thing that can be a big issue when you have a lot of Gemini energy and you're more of an introspective type of person, the type of person who wants to understand themselves and other people psychologically, there can be trauma dumping as an issue here, which comes from like a genuine desire to understand yourself and to be understood by other people, because feeling misunderstood is a really strong potential issue with this placement. But through trying to be understood, you might share so much that it makes people uncomfortable. There can be a need to filter your thoughts, filter your words. But on the other end, it can also be a need to express more because you're not expressing enough. It's getting clogged up inside you and it needs to come out. Obviously, the theme with all Lilith placements is going to be balance. It's not going too hard in one direction or the other. But this can be a tough one because it's your mental processes. It's very automatic often. And because of the anxiety, the nerves that are involved, it can feel very automatic, like your mind is just wired in certain ways. So if there are ways that you seem to be wired that you don't like, it can take a lot of effort to break from those patterns. And just because you think differently from other people and aren't always understood, that doesn't mean there's anything wrong with you. There isn't necessarily anything wrong with your communication process. This can even be a sign to just claim your uniqueness and express yourself the way that you want to. Really, it's all about, Gemini is oddly about like goals in conversation. It can be a very manipulative energy because it tends to understand things quickly and can be several steps ahead in any conversation situation, which can be a great thing or a difficult thing because you can get to that energy where you're like preparing yourself, you've got questions lined up and then you never get to them, and it's just like too much going on in your head. And this can even be directly manipulative. I mean, Lilith in its unhealthy form is typically a very negative expression. So using communication to get what you want out of people, weaponizing intelligence in a way, just a risk with this. And that sort of thing can be very unconscious too. Consider if you are going into conversations with a goal and not directly expressing the goal, more trying to shape people's answers based off of how you're presenting the information, even like the energy that you're coming into it with. Do take care to notice what energy you're putting into conversations and what you're expecting to get out of it, because it can come across as like underhanded and manipulative when you get what you want without directly asking for it. People can feel deceived or used, even if it's coming from like an innocent place. Maybe you're just afraid to ask for what you really want. Maybe you've been led to believe that you can't ask for what you want and you have to go in sort of a roundabout, underhanded way to get things out of people. There needs to be more peace, just more peace in general in your mind. This can come with assuming that people have bad intentions. This can come with being mentally manipulated early on in life, learning this as a form of learning this behavior, and a fear of rejection. Lilith comes with shame attached to things. So shame of asking for what you want, shame in under or over communicating. And I mean, in this way, this energy can be really lonely because Gemini is so much about connecting to people and being able to form that and being able to share information, share your thoughts and ideas, and have like creative conversation, being mutually inspired. This is the beauty of the energy. But when you feel like you're not able to have that and you feel like people aren't going to receive you and you feel like people aren't going to receive you in the way that you would prefer, they're not going to get what you're saying. There can just be like a feeling of being really alone within your own mind and not having any real outlets for your thoughts. Because this is inherently a really creative, like, ideas, solutions, all sorts of things this placement can come up with. Because this is an energy that focuses on like ideas and solutions. It's naturally social and wants to make things better for people, wants to improve the situations around it. So there's also a really strong desire to share information. Gemini is about distributing information. It's about collecting data from this person, this situation, and like making sure that everybody knows. It's about connecting through words, whether they're spoken words, written words, whatever gets the idea out. But this can come with a feeling or an actual reality of people not putting as much effort into talking to you, reaching out. So it's important to find some way to express yourself, ideally to people. But even if you're just journaling, easing the pressure of your mind, getting those words, those thoughts that are just incessantly rattling around, get them out on paper. Your brain won't have to try to constantly organize and remember things. If you just write it down, you can always look at it then. And this sign can be obsessive too. You can have obsessive thoughts. You can have hyperfixations, which I don't really think there's anything wrong with. I guess if it's disrupting your daily life, but I don't think there's anything wrong with being extremely interested in one or a few subjects. But one thing that an unhealthy expression of Gemini energy can do is cause you to rationalize your emotions, cause you to prefer to think things through rather than feel them. You can always think yourself out of the feeling. You can think yourself into like, oh no, it's fine, I don't really care. But like, if the emotion is still in there, it needs to come out and it needs to be recognized. But there can be a struggle with this placement to express yourself emotionally to other people. In that case, it is important to get comfortable within yourself and try to like get things straight in your head, get to where you understand how you feel about it. It's usually better before you release all of these emotional thoughts and words on another person. Of course, if you have somebody who's perfectly fine with that, that's fine. There's nothing wrong with expressing yourself to somebody who will listen. But it can be overwhelming, and that can put strain on relationships sometimes if you do have like an extreme moment of processing like a flood of emotions. I guess this is kind of a case-by-case thing, because I don't want to tell anybody to not release the emotions, especially if you've been keeping them inside you and desperately want to express them. So assess the situation. But like, if you are a chronic oversharer, I think it might be better to write down and organize your thoughts and feelings before taking them to someone else. You can organize your thoughts and feelings before you take them to someone else, because in that way you've got more security about what you're saying, because there can be so much anxiety when you are expressing yourself emotionally. You can be in sort of like a frenzied state, and then afterwards there's that feeling of like, oh, did I do too much? Did I say too much? Did they understand me? Did I say something wrong? Like all of that, you can avoid that by writing it out first, organizing it first, like getting calm and finding a place of peace within yourself. And believe me, I know that sounds hard, but it's possible. And it gets better with practice and with time and with having patience with yourself. And what's the thing that people always say about Gemini is that it's two-faced. So this can definitely be expressing two-faced energy, where you come across as one person with one person and then a totally different sort of person with somebody else. And they could talk about you and both would have a completely different idea of who you are. Or maybe one day you're acting like this and then the next day you're... The thing is that this is a mutable energy and it wants to communicate. Gemini is so good at mirroring people. It's really good at matching people's energy, matching their expression, and like speaking their language. That's kind of what it exists to do, to morph and be able to facilitate that communication with basically anybody. But if your behaviors are leaning more towards manipulative or ingenuine, it's just important to, like, within the flow of conversation, find a way to check, is what I'm saying true? Or is what I'm saying trying to get something out of the situation? Am I indirectly trying to express myself because I feel like I'm not allowed to say what I really want to say? There's a lot of thought that has to go into it, but ultimately, like, leaning into it takes a lot of practice. It takes a lot of familiarity with your feelings and practice in expressing them and, like, understanding them and sorting through them. But ideally, you will have, like, emotional impulses during the conversation, and you just lean into those, like, lean into the authenticity, lean into how you really feel. As a Gemini, Sun, and Mercury, like, I understand the difficulty of this. Chameleons in conversation, it really happens. But I would say focus mostly on just the truth. On not lying, not creating lies. Like, if you do find that when you're talking to somebody, you match their energy so much that you are, like, agreeing with them even when you don't agree, or saying things that you think are the right answer as opposed to the actual truth. Just recognizing that, like, making a note of it in your head, and even just practicing on your own, like, saying what the truth really is. It's a gradual process, but the more you peel back the Lilith layers of shame, the more easily you can actually speak your truth and just be authentic in conversation. It's very freeing because you don't have to juggle lies, you don't have to remember who you were with another person, and it really is just such an automatic behavior, but that awareness is always there. And if you do find that you frequently might use certain lies, like, even just to make people feel better, like, out of politeness, just practice saying the actual truth. Most likely, if you don't want to hurt somebody's feelings, you like them and you care about their feelings. Of course, this can be a conditioned response, and even if you don't care or actively dislike somebody, you might still feel like you're not allowed to hurt their feelings, but it's just like you are allowed to say what is the truth to you, even if it feels like it might be technically the right thing, technically the wrong thing to say. Thinking of all of the, like, should not in conversation, like, it's polite to do this. It's never okay to say this truth. Just try to, like, scrap everything that you know and rewrite the rules for yourself. It gets better with practice, but this is, like, sort of an exposure type of thing. You have to expose yourself to situations where you are being honest beyond what you want to actually say, where you're saying, no, I don't want to do that. I don't want to go to that. I do not want to participate in that. Instead of, oh, I actually have plans, or, like, I don't know, I'll get, just all the different ways that you can kind of be wishy-washy and get around things. Try being more direct, because it's true to yourself, and it's reclaiming that power, the ability to use your words to express how it really is. You are a person. Your thoughts and your feelings and your desires are just as valid as anybody else's. There's no need to focus on having a kind, polite conversation. Let it be neutral. Like, saying no to somebody, saying something that you think might hurt their feelings but feels necessary to say, like, you just feel it, it's the truth to you, that doesn't make you a bad person. Most likely, somebody you care about, if they were to express themselves honestly and just tell you how it is, even if you didn't like the answer, you would still respect them. In fact, you'd respect them more for being honest with you. So just avoiding any tendencies to, like, be tricky, even testing people, any form of manipulation. It's something that should be avoided. There's nothing wrong with being charming, with knowing the right words to say, but just make sure it's coming from a place of integrity, because this can be a real skill for you. But Lilith always wants to be seen in complete honesty, complete, just genuine who you are. It doesn't want to get along. It doesn't want to appease society. Lilith just wants to be and be free to just be who she is, what she represents. And I mean, Lilith it's a dark placement. This can result in dark humor, even being offensive on purpose, like playing the devil's advocate. You might not be a people pleaser. You might be the complete opposite, where you actively want to make people think outside the box. Maybe it's actually more comfortable for you to make people uncomfortable. It can be a power thing. There are really so many ways that this can go. But again, the key is balance. Balance and honesty, being true to yourself. Because Lilith, the energy distorts things. It's the shame, it's the rejection, the self-rejection. We want to look at the truth within us, the shadow, the inner child that wants to be heard, wants to be acknowledged. That's where the power comes from here. In using your skill in... Okay. That's where the power comes from here, in using your communication to express who you are as a person, to tell the world who you are, what you're here for, what you have to say, and to learn from other people. So focus on healthy communication. Just be who you are in the moment. There are no standards that you have to meet. There's nobody that you have to be. There can be such a strong feeling that in any conversation with anybody, you have to be something. You have to express yourself appropriately according to whatever the rules are, but there are no rules. Lilith hates rules. Gemini loves rules. But I think that the combination of these two energies, though they're very different in what they represent, Lilith being expressed through Gemini gets her point across. And she tells the world who she is. So this placement can be a really powerful one when it is expressed in a balanced and healthy way, and coming from a place of self-love, self-respect. So I hope that this helped in some way. Thank you so much for watching. I love you. Bye.